Welcome to today's episode of One Breath. Today we will explore the nature of truth, considering its relationship with our nature, and how we can consummate our being within it by our willingness to be subject to it. We will begin with the sound of the bell and a short pause.
So today, what will we talk about today? Truth, that's what it was, yeah, truth. When we look at the truth, what we find is that people tend to like to play with it. They like to mess with it. They like to test its limits. At times they try to own it, to control it, to manipulate it, to possess it, and to use it to support their beliefs, rather than surrendering their notions and their beliefs to it. When we look at how often do we seek to make things to be true that simply are not true? How often do we justify our beliefs and our notions about right and wrong via rationalization? And do we somehow think that our explanations of things make them to be so? Or do we suppose that getting others to agree with our notions makes them to be so? All sort of truth such as that is manufactured truth. It's conditional truth. It's not the real thing. If we find ourselves explaining things and trying to get others to agree with us, that can be a red flag. That can be a signal that we're beginning to deviate from the reality of what's here now, the actuality. And when we wander away from the truth, there's a tendency to become noisy with that. The truth sort of brings with it a blanket of like silence, like a hush. When we're walking in awareness of it. But when we're trying to conform it into what we think it should be through our rationalization, we tend to get noisy. When you look at the typical example, not to pick on car salesmen, but the example of a dishonest car salesman trying to sell somebody a lemon, they're usually using a lot of words. Through the force of words and cunningness and crafty fabrications and confabulations, people try to make that which is flawed appear to be all right. All right. So if we find ourselves trying to get people to agree, sometimes we need to just sit back and ask ourselves, what are we trying to sell? And to who? Who are we trying to sell it to? Are we trying to sell it to others? Are we trying to sell it to others, trying to sell ourselves on it? Are we trying to sell it to others in an attempt to sell ourselves on it, to convince ourselves by their agreement that we're right? If Jesus made it simple in the Gospels, he said, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything more than that is unskillful. It's unskillful. Truth brings with it this simplicity, does it not? It brings with it this uncomplicated answer. It's so uncomplicated that it's an answer in itself. You see, because truth answers to no one. Its answer is itself. Its reply is itself. So the truth is not an embodiment of a lot of words, a lot of ideas, a lot of things like that. And it's often seen in this like sacred silence, you know? Sort of when we get quiet, when we get still, that we begin to see it, that things begin to clear up. But we don't have to push it on anybody, do we? We don't have to sell anybody on it when it's real. Our autonomy comes with our authenticity. If we're not true to ourselves, we cannot rule ourselves. As long as we entertain notions of a separate self, we'll never be free from anarchy. The rising and falling of civilizations and the thing is, what comes out of truth is no longer truth. What grows from truth remains true. Because truth is an extension, it's not a departure. A severed limb is no longer part of the body. It loses its life. It loses its purpose for being disconnected from the body. So there's nothing can come out of truth, but truth rather grows rather than goes. It never does depart from itself. So unless we abide in this vine of truth, we really won't be producing the fruit of truth. Our love just sort of becomes this masquerade if it's not consummated in truth. Truth is not what you make it to be. Truth is not what you make it to be. Truth is what allows you to be. Truth is not realized by forming it on one's own. Your graven idols are not a living God. All images and perceptions and notions which arise from a conditioned genesis that appear to be solid and sure, all these have their appointment with an apocalypse, with a revelation and disclosure that will bring closure to them. Because there is this all-consuming fire that falls upon all, that consumes not only the flesh and blood, but it goes down to the bones. It consumes deeply. It consumes notions and beliefs and desires alike that consume the mind and heart. It consumes notions and beliefs and desires that consume the mind and heart. There's this fire that consumes all worlds. All worlds. There's this like holy fire in this I hate to use the word concept, but for lack of a better word, I'll use the word concept of holy fire is shared not only in one religion, but in diverse religions, in Christian religions and other religions. They talk about the end of the age when this holy fire will come upon everything. Yeah. What question do you have, sir? Go ahead. Do you want to type it out, or do you want to take the mic? Yeah, go ahead and type it out. Now I'll address it here. Mm-hmm. If we are simply one, does that mean that we are not individuals? I like to look at that. One of the ways I could address that is to be we have one body. We have one body here. I have feet, I have arms, I have hands. In reality, the hands, the feet, and all these different parts are just notions. They're just beliefs I have. The thing I call a hand, I could call a number of things. In other language, you might not even use the term hand, because all that's notions. In reality, there's only one. There's only one. But the mind of men takes and divides things up into pieces and complicates it. Truth is very simple. Truth does not complicate and divide. Matter of fact, in truth in its essence doesn't even have to speak, because in its pure sense, everything is known as it is, and there's not even a word to speak. Not even a word to speak. And our oneness doesn't take from us our uniqueness. You know, you look at the snow and it's one snowstorm. It's one snowstorm. It's one body of snow, but every flake is a little different. There's one body of humanity, but every fingerprint is a little different. So oneness and uniqueness are sort of like a paradox. They both exist at the same time. They don't negate each other, but they actually support each other. Okay, so going back to what I was talking about, I was saying that diverse religions believe in this concept of this holy, like, sacred fire that will consume everything in the end. And there is a fire that the force of rationale cannot endure. It's a fire of truth. It's a fire of the truth of impermanence. Minds change. It's their nature to change, given time. Given time. Given time. All things change within it. All things change within it. Given time, all things change within it. What does not change is what gives the time. Patience. Patience is something that endures. What is not patient cannot last. What is impatient cannot survive the fire. Because patience tends to reveal what the crafty one wants to hide. There's nothing hidden which shall not be revealed. There's nothing hidden that shall not be. An old adage that comes from the Old Testament. A lot of the older folks used to say this in different churches. That it was a saying, and it said, "Your sins will find you out. Your sins will find you out." I like to put it this way: your folly will make itself known for what it truly is, which is simply folly, given time. What is skillful is hidden in the obvious, in nature itself. True wisdom is within wisdom that has no origin. True wisdom is within the wisdom that has no origin. Yet what is unskillful tries to hide itself in what it fabricates. True wisdom doesn't try to fabricate some idea to conceal itself. It doesn't build this wall of conceptions and confabulations and all that, and it may appear in the form of religious doctrine or philosophy to try to conceal itself. True wisdom doesn't build upon things that it manufactures. It comes out of the clear blue because it's always relevant to the moment. So it comes out of that which is timeless. It comes out of that which does not exist by cause and condition. But yet what is unskillful tries to hide itself in what it fabricates. And all fabrications will come apart in time, given being patient. So it's important to discern between the foolishness of the wise and the wise fool. For the foolishness of God is wiser than human wisdom, and the weakness of God is stronger than human strength. God creates by what he lets die, not by what he forces to be. Space is made to be, and things just take their course. When you give place to life, life takes place. And nothing needs to be forced out of existence, does it? A fire left unattended will burn itself out. It's the attention you give that feeds existence, doesn't it? What you give your heart to tends to consume you. So we might even say, don't feed the bears. Don't feed the bears and they will not eat you. We might say, feed the bears and they will eat you. Don't feed the bears and they won't eat you. Or feed the bears and they will eat you. I might say, don't feed your fears or they will eat you up. Feed your fears or they will consume you. It's not the attention itself, but it's the kind of attention you give to things that matters the most. The wrong kind of attention will make fears grow strong and overtake you and cause you to lose presence of heart and mind. Yet the right kind of attention will reveal your fears for what they really are. It will strip them of a cloak of significance and make them to be small and manageable. It's about your willingness to know things as they are. Your willingness to know things as they are. rather than your insistence on thinking things into being. We create our own hell by our imaginations and our confabulations of what truth is. We attach ourselves to some notion, to some belief, and keep it alive and make it permanent by feeding it our hearts, by giving it our hearts, our attention. We become hypnotized by it. It becomes to possess us. And then in that process we lose hope. We fall into despair. Being led away from our awareness of the impermanent nature of things. Hell begins to make itself real to us. Moment by moment. As we stay in that cycle of obsession. Yet the truth be known, we are freed by knowing the truth. Jesus said, he said, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So it's the nature of truth to bring with it liberation. If what we're believing doesn't make the heart lighter and the mind unconfined, if it doesn't release within us the joy that's been held captive, the peace that's been held captive by our notions of what is, then it's probably not the truth. For the nature of truth is to liberate us into being love, into being that joy, into being that peace and that righteousness that we are. Truth liberates. It doesn't heap condemnation on us. Truth does not accuse. It does not make accusations. It lets things accuse themselves. It lets things speak for themselves. Its discernment is not judgment that comes from a position of separation. Its discernment comes from oneness or sameness. No one needed to tell Jesus what was within a man, for he knew what was within a man. He knew what was common to him was common to all. His mysticism was not based on the occult. It came from the obvious, from the willingness to see the obvious. That's what made Jesus a person of depth. That's what made Jesus a person of insight. It came out of his integrity. He was supernatural in his willingness to be natural, to recognize the true nature of things as everything being one. Jesus wasn't like this hard thinker. You don't know what truth is by your thinking, by your religious studies, by your philosophical philandering. You don't know what truth is by your cleverness. It's your cleverness that keeps you from realizing it. You become so clever when you're clever that you fool yourself. So clever when you're so clever that you fool yourself. And not being true to self, you won't know truth. For truth is not known by thinking. Truth is only known by being. Like knows like. What is true is altogether true, or it isn't true at all. What is whole is altogether whole, or it isn't whole at all. What is alive is altogether alive, or it's dead. What is pure is altogether pure, or it's impure. He who has peace has it completely, or has none at all. Who loves, loves altogether, or none at all. Such things only are what they are alone. Such things only are what they are alone. Truth is like that. Truth is what it is by itself. The divided heart is heartless. It's the heart that's divided that brings forth a lot of the suffering in the world. If our hearts were not divided, we would not need to contend. If our hearts were not divided, we would have no need to contend. But because people do not have the heart of the one, they become heartless. They half-heartedly go through life, never really being real, for they never put their whole heart into what they say and do. And the only heart that is whole is the heart that's wholly surrendered to the one. When the one has all of our hearts, all of our souls, all of our mind, all of our power, we have no heart to be elsewhere. We have no mind, no notion to contend. We have no power to fight with. We have no desire of our own. For such a man that's given his heart and mind and soul and strength to God, for such a man the war is over. His heart being resolved to abide in submission, he finds rest for his soul. His desire waned. He doesn't fly into fits of rage or seethe like a boiling pot anymore. His mind given over, he enters into righteousness of simplicity. He doesn't know any wrong. His power given over, he doesn't try to overpower. His power skillfully channeled doesn't wear itself out. Now what we make out of truth might have some truth in it. What we make out of truth might have some truth in it. But it is not the truth. It is not the truth, any more than making furniture out of wood makes the furniture to be a tree. What you make out of the tree takes the life out of the tree. The tree is real by just letting the tree be, not conforming it and shaping it and forcing it to be something besides a tree. Truth has no lie in it. Truth has no lie in it. Yet all lies have some truth to them. If they did not, they could not be. They could not be the lies that they are if there was no truth in them. For truth is the foundation for being itself. Truth is a two-edged sword. It brings out the good and the bad. It brings out the good and the bad. And you see, there's always good in the bad. There's always good in the bad. Jesus drew the good out of the bad. His presence brought the good out of tax collectors. It brought the good out of the harlots and the other sinners, for lack of a better word. It's a two-edged sword. He also drew the bad out of the good. He drew the good out of the bad, but he also drew the bad out of the good. He provoked those who thought themselves to be righteous to act unbecomingly. Pharisees and teachers of the law conspired against him, lied about him, tried to kill him. So it not only drew the good out of the bad, but it drew the bad out of the good. Truth has a tendency to do that. It draws the good out of the bad and the bad out of the good. It sort of levels the playing field. It sort of levels the playing field. I like what Buddha once said. The Buddha once said, the good for the good is easy to do. The good for the evil is hard to do. Evil for the evil is easy to do. And evil for the noble ones is hard to do. But the truth is a two-edged sword. The truth will offend one, and to another it will bring with it acceptance. The same sun blinds one and makes things clear to another. It all depends on if one looks with it or at it. Looking in the direction that it shines, going with the flow in the same direction, looking with it, the world becomes clear. Looking directly at it, we lose our sight. The nature of the sun is the same, yet its effect depends on the looker. The Tao is always present with you. You can use it however you want. It brings forth infinite worlds. The men use the same fire to warm themselves and to cook with that they burn one another at the stake with. The nature of the fire is the same, yet one cooks with it, one warms himself with it, another burns his neighbor up with it. The nature of the knife is the same. The doctor heals with it, the murderer kills with it. The truth is the same, but it's what we do with the truth. It's what we do with it. Jesus once said, Jesus being the very embodiment of the truth, once said, he said, whosoever is not against you is for you. Is for you. Is for you. And at another time, Jesus said this. He said, whoever is not with me is against me. And whoever does not gather with me scatters. Jesus is the same Jesus. Yet some are for and others are against. The truth is the same truth. Yet some are for and others are against. The truth is the same truth, yet others are for and others are against. And you see, the doing for we have to sort of look at that other thing that Jesus said, whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. Because if we're doing things for something, doing for insinuates a reason or a purpose. We're doing it for this, we're doing it for that. When we do things for, we do them as a means to an end. Yet to do with is to do as. It's not a doing as a means to an end. So there's a collective consciousness that is with, not merely for anything. And some become collected individuals by gathering their life as a whole by non-resistance to what life brings to them, what life gives to them. And others lose presence of mind trying to figure it all out on their own, doing things for something as a means to the end, for some reward or expected outcome, trying to piece together a life for themselves. They lose presence of mind trying to figure life out on their own, trying to make sense out of that which gives sense. Trying to make sense out of that which gives sense, and trying to make sense out of that which gives sense, they become senseless. They become futile in their thinking. The eye, turned within the head backwards, loses its sight by trying to see itself. It's the eye that sees with the body that looks with it, not at it, that sees. That looks with it as being one, as being the same with. Not as something that you're not yourself. Not as something that you're separate from. A good illustration of this would be if you're in a car at night traveling down a road. Inside a car at night, being one with that car, you see the road clearly from the headlights coming out from the car, right? Yet if we stand in front of an oncoming car looking at it, it's that same car will blind us by the headlights. The nature of the light is the same, yet it enlightens one's path and it makes another blind. It all depends on the position. On the position it all depends on the position of our heart, the way we see things. The same truth can enlighten us, or it can make us blind. It all depends on the way that we see things. The monkey goes out and pulls a fish out of the water and puts it up in a tree to save it from drowning. A drunkard uses a flashlight on his cell phone to search for his lost cell phone with it. The person who thinks he's lost his keys walks around looking for them while they're in his hand, unaware that he holds them, blinded by the panic of losing them. The man caught up in thought driving to his destinations. The man caught up in thought about, while driving to his destination, caught up about arriving on time or not, fixated on that, he passes up the exit ramp altogether. He totally misses the exit. The religious crusader fighting for peace and making war to bring it about. Yet it's its presence to be with what's here. To be here as a loving presence with a heart of acceptance that brings sanity and clarity to us. It's that way of looking at the truth. Are we looking with it or simply at it? When we look with the truth, we look at it the way I was talking about the guy in the car and the eye in the head. We look with it. When we look with it, we see things as it sees. Our eye and its eye are one eye. If we look at it, we can look at it from a number of different positions. So it's like the old story where there were a number of people looking at an elephant, and one looked at it from its rear end, and one looked at it from its front end, and one looked at it from its side, and they all had a different idea of what an elephant was. But if they could only be the elephant and see things from being rather than looking at things, so recall Jesus said, whoever does not gather with him, he said, whoever does not gather with me scatters. Whoever does not gather with the truth scatters. What we gather, what we recollect, apart from the presence of the truth, simply becomes a collection of notions that separate us from the truth. And the presence of those notions and beliefs becomes the conditioning that brings us to see conditionally. That brings us to see things conditionally, with presuppositions, with prejudice, with colored glasses. We lose sight of the real world. And it gives form to this collective consciousness of lack and pain and suffering that comes out of what has been collected collectively over time. Yet all the notions and beliefs are subject to time. They only exist in time. When we don't look back or ahead, when we just look at what's here, then what is there to believe? Being here, being one with what's here, we have faith, we have trust in being itself. We have no need to believe anything in particular. And so we tend to shed these beliefs as a snake sheds its skin upon awakening. We find that we no longer have to attach ourselves to anything to be. We become okay with being itself, with simply being itself. It's enough just to be. We don't need beliefs to be. We don't need beliefs to be. We don't need notions to be. What is apart from our notions of what it is. What is apart from our notions of what it is. In the simplicity of being, the mind falls silent. The heart grows light. And the horses of desire run away never to return. And to the one who is well gone, everything has gone well. To the one who is well gone, everything has gone well. To the one who is well gone, everything has gone well. I'm going to end about right there. Thank you. Namaste. God bless you guys.
This concludes today's session of One Breath. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free. To listen to past episodes or view our schedule, please visit our website at www.tinyurl.com/littlefell. Godspeed.